What if I told you that the noise in your head at 2 a.m. isn't a symptom of something wrong with you? What if it's loyalty? Loyalty to a version of yourself that was trained, somewhere along the way, to believe that if you stop worrying, something will fall apart. Hold that for a second, because that small shift from something's broken in me to something in me thinks it's protecting me, that reframe changed how I relate to my own mind. And that's exactly what today is about. Welcome to The Quiet Knowing Within. This is episode 7. And I want to go somewhere a little uncomfortable today. Not dramatically uncomfortable, just honest. Because the question I keep returning to is this: why is it so hard to be quiet? Not quiet in the room. The room can be perfectly still. Lights off, no sound, everyone else asleep. I mean quiet inside. Most of us have tried the standard remedies, the apps with the gentle bells, the breathing exercises, the guided sleep meditations, and they help for a moment, a temporary reprieve. But then something shifts, and the engine starts back up. And what I've started to wonder is this: what if those things don't hold? Not because they're bad tools, but because they're treating the noise, without ever asking what the noise is actually for. That's the question worth sitting with today. There are 6 places I want to take you. Not prescriptions, not steps. Just truths that took me time to absorb and might be worth passing along. Truth 1. Your mind was never meant to live here. Here's where I want to start. The mind is not capable of living in the present moment. I know that sounds counterintuitive, especially when so much of what we hear tells us to be here now, to anchor, to ground ourselves, to stay present. But what if the mind genuinely cannot do that? Not because it's broken, but because the present moment feels dangerous to it. Think about what the mind actually is. At its core, it's a survival mechanism. Its entire function is to scan what's already happened and project what might happen next. It lives in the past and the future simultaneously, swinging between the two like a pendulum. The present, this exact second, registers to the mind as a blind spot, because the present is safe, and a survival tool doesn't know what to do with safety. It only knows how to respond to threat. You may notice this in your own experience. The moments when life is actually fine, when nothing is actively wrong, are often when the mind gets the loudest, when it works the hardest to find something to worry about. That's not malfunction. That's the mechanism doing what it was designed to do. And once I started seeing it that way, not as a broken brain, but as an overworked survival tool, something in me relaxed a little. Not because the noise stopped, but because I stopped being surprised by it. Truth 2. The night watchman. There's an image I keep coming back to. A night watchman, working a graveyard shift in a building that is completely secure. Locked doors, active alarms, nothing to worry about. What does he do with his shift? He doesn't sit down. He goes back through old security footage, looking for mistakes he might have missed. Then he stares out at the dark tree line, inventing things that might emerge from the shadows. He never rests. Not because the building needs him to pace. It doesn't. but because the pacing gives him a sense of purpose. That's what the ego does. It creates a crisis, so it can feel necessary for managing that crisis. There's a specific payoff in the worry. The illusion that your vigilance is somehow structural. That if you're anxious enough, thorough enough, relentless enough, you're the thing holding the walls up. But the walls were never yours to hold. They stand on their own. The watchman's pacing doesn't keep the building standing. It just keeps the watchman employed. What started to make sense to me is that anxiety isn't a random malfunction. It's a negotiation the ego is running. And it's been running it for so long that we've forgotten there was ever another option. Truth 3. You are responding to ghosts. This one took me a while to really absorb. There's a difference between what's physically happening right now and what the mind is simulating. Physical reality is only what's occurring in this exact fraction of a second. The weight of where you're sitting, the temperature of the air, the sound in the room, what your hands feel like. That's it. That's all that's actually happening. Everything else, the conversation from 3 years ago that you're still replaying, the bill that's coming, the thing you said that you wish you could take back, the meeting tomorrow morning, none of that is physically in the room with you. And yet, we respond to it as though it is. The adrenaline is real. The tightening in the chest is real. The full biological stress response, completely real. But it's responding to a simulation. The ego reaches outside of reality, grabs something from the past or the future, drags it into this moment, and manufactures the emergency. And then, it justifies its own existence by managing the emergency it created. You may find, when you genuinely slow down and ask yourself, what is literally happening right now in this second? The answer is almost always, not much. The chaos lives upstairs. The room is quiet. We abandon the only real moment we have to live inside a simulation designed to keep a frightened ego employed. Truth 4. Refuse the transaction. So what do you actually do with that? Most people try to fight it, to wrestle the thoughts down, to force the mind quiet through willpower. And you already know how that ends. The more you try not to think about something, the more it fills the room. You can't suppress a thought by grabbing it harder. That's not a strategy. It's just exhaustion wearing the costume of effort. What started to make more sense to me is simpler than that. You can refuse the transaction. Picture someone handing out flyers on a crowded sidewalk. You don't have to confront them. You don't have to snatch the flyer and tear it up. You don't owe them a reaction at all. You just keep your hands in your pockets and walk past. Every anxious loop the mind offers you comes with a payoff. The feeling of being responsible. The heat of righteous worry. The quiet sense that by agonizing over it, you are doing something about it. Those feelings are real. They're familiar. They're even a little addictive. But you don't have to accept them. You can notice what's being handed to you and simply not take it. No wrestling, no suppression. Just a hand that stays in a pocket. Truth 5. Taking your hands off the wheel. This is where it gets a little more uncomfortable. And I want to hold this gently, because I sat with this one for a long time before it stopped feeling threatening. The ego has a final argument, a trump card. It tells you if you stop worrying, you will not survive. Not as a metaphor. The ego genuinely equates a quiet mind with collapse, with losing everything, with the car drifting off the road. And so it keeps the motor running. Because the motor feels like protection. What I began to see was this. The worry was never the thing keeping the car on the road. It felt like it was. It was convincing. I had years of evidence, or at least what felt like evidence. But the car was never in danger of swerving because I stopped gripping the wheel inside my mind. The grip wasn't steering anything. It was just wearing me out. There's a mental exercise worth trying. Not reckless, not irresponsible, just honest. What happens when you genuinely allow yourself to say, if I make it through this, I make it through. If I don't, I don't. When you stop being held hostage by the threat of non-survival, the negotiation ends. The ego loses the leverage it's been using to keep the engine running. And something quieter begins to surface. Truth 6. Resign as general manager. The last piece is this. You don't apply to be here. You didn't fill out a form. You didn't submit a request for existence. You arrived. And somewhere along the way, you picked up the belief that it was your job, your personal responsibility, to manage the entire operation from inside your head. Every relationship, every outcome, every version of the future, all of it carried, alone, every night. There's something I've started to find quietly, almost gently funny about that, because whatever is running this universe, whatever you call it, was doing something long before I got here. And it'll keep doing something long after I'm gone. Which means the weight I've been carrying, the urgency to engineer every outcome through sheer force of worry, may not actually be mine to carry. What would it look like to resign from that position? Not from your life, not from your commitments or your responsibilities, but from the role of general manager of everything you cannot control. The Watchman gets to finally sit down, not because the building is no longer real, but because he understands, maybe for the first time, that he was never actually holding it up. So here's where I want to leave you. Not with a solution, not with a prescription. Just a question worth sitting with the next time the engine starts running at 2 a.m. Ask yourself, honestly, without judgment, what is the exact payoff my mind is getting from this right now? Is it the illusion of control? The familiar feeling of being responsible? The heat of a drama you've rehearsed so many times it almost feels like company? Just notice it. You don't have to fix it. You don't have to fight it. You can simply observe what's being offered and keep your hands in your pockets. Because here's what I keep returning to. If the engine finally stopped, not forced, not suppressed, just allowed to run out of fuel on its own, who would be sitting in that quiet room? You might find that the person left behind is someone you actually like being around. Someone you haven't had a lot of quiet time with. The silence isn't a void. It's what's been underneath the noise the whole time. Waiting. This has been episode 7 of The Quiet Knowing Within. I'm glad you were here. Take your time with whatever came up, and I'll see you in the next one. And if anything in this video resonated with you, please comment below. I read and reply to every comment.